Ubisoft invited me again to play more Skull and Bones before launch, and this time I got to play 4 hours of what they're calling their endgame hands-on preview build. So this is when you're max level, you've got some of the best gear in the game, and you're really grinding and trying to defeat those endgame bosses with your friends. Now, if you follow the channel, you may remember I've played this game several times. I played it back at E3 2018, and then the game went completely silent. Turns out they went back to the drawing board and redid significant parts of the game. And then they came back with the closed beta in August, and it was a mixed bag for me. The pluses were the ship combat and the game looking really pretty at times, but I found myself missing some of the more immersive, authentic pirate experience stuff that you got from a game like Black Flag, which came out forever ago. And that brings us to this endgame preview hands-on build. So before we jump in, thanks to Ubisoft for this opportunity. So Skull and Bones is supposed to be a live service ongoing game with updates and seasons and new content rolling out. And the majority of the content that I played through is designed to be played multiplayer with other human beings. So I just want to get that out of the way because I don't want people to think this is Black Flag or some other like solo pirate game. No, like this is meant to be in a persistent world that is going to evolve over time. And I will admit freely that that's not my preference of video game. I would have much preferred a single player solo experience. There is some narrative content that I got to play back in August, but generally speaking, I don't think this is made for a single player audience. With that out of the way, I played the entire 4 hours in a team. We had a tank ship, we had 2 damage ships, and a support ship that was keeping us healed during the fights. In the very beginning, they gave us a bunch of time to sort of kit out our ship and our pirate. So I went around St. Anne, which is the major hub area of at least the demo, and I got to customize my pirate, give him a bunch of tattoos and a bunch of fancy pirate gear. Then I spent a lot of time diving into ship customization, particularly with the weapons. So there are 4 slots on the ship, and then you've also got a mortar slot in the middle. It felt like each slot had maybe 2 to 3 to 4 different options in terms of weapons and also how they behave. So at the very front and back of the ship, you had a flamethrower, there's a torpedo sort of thing, which I was like, how does that work? And then there's a shotgun type of cannon. And then on the sides, you have like long-range cannons, short-range cannons, different variety there. And then the mortar in particular was interesting to me because you had these rockets that would rain down a ton of missiles. And then you would have like one big mortar that was just like this big boy that would lay down a ton of damage. Once I was done with that, we decided to attack a fort while we were waiting for an endgame activity to pop up. This is the first time I got to experience the endgame combat. So we're supposed to have all the weapons and supposed to feel pretty powerful. But I really didn't. I don't know if we were rusty or we just sucked at the game, but honest to God, this took us 15 minutes to take down one fort. This isn't like an end game fort or a boss fort or anything like that, just a random point on the map. The objective is to attack the glowing red parts of the fort and wear down these buildings, but what it felt like is just kind of slowly circling and trying to reload all of your weapons, avoiding cannon and mortar fire, and then there would be reinforcement ships that would come in and try to attack you as well. So I don't know if the balance was off or we just sucked. I mean, that could totally be true, but it just felt weird. It felt like a weird experience and not something I'd want to do more than one of. After that, we waited a little bit more because you have to wait for these endgame activities to pop up. And the first one we did is called Hostile Takeover. Now, the way it works is you sail into this zone, wait for the timer to count down, and then once the event starts, up to 4 people are competing for the highest score. It's basically like a score attack game mode. So there's going to be NPC ships that sail through this area, and also there's some NPC like battlements, reinforcements on land around there. So your goal is to attack those, deal damage, take them out, and that, counts towards your progress in the top right, which you can check at any time. But the trick is, it's also PvP. So any of the actual humans in the zone who are also competing to get the highest score, they can kill you too. So there's a lot of different ways you could go about this. You could try to take out the other NPCs, including people in your own party. The other creator that was in my party attacked and killed me. Or you can play nice and just attack the NPCs. It sort of feels like you want to protect yourself at all times, but also going after real humans is, you know, a beneficial thing. It prevents them from getting score, and it gets yourself some score too. In the context of this being an endgame activity, the reason you're doing this is because it generates a rare resource called Pieces of 8. And of course, you'll use that to buy really rare endgame items, ships, weapons, so on and so forth. They also grant you something called a manufactory. There's 76 of these across the map, and these produce that same currency, the Pieces of 8. And so I'm showing you right here, I got the Fonderie Royale. It produces White Skull rum, which you can sell for silver, but the real main point of getting a manufactory is to get the Pieces of 8. So if you decide to run this factory, it'll generate 25 Pieces of 8 per hour. But when you run the factory, it only runs for an hour. So I think the idea is you can take control of these factories, but you have to go back around and restart them, reinvesting in them so they produce that currency. So I'm sure you guys have figured out by now, the whole point of the end game in Skull and Bones is to get all of the manufactories and increase your empire revenue to as much as possible and get really, really rich. There's also 18 different territories. You can see them sort of carved up on the map that have a certain amount of manufactories. So if you take control of all manufactories within a territory, you get a production bonus. And then you can also establish trade routes by taking control of linked manufactories in order to get a production bonus. Now, this endgame system works in seasons. So once you hit the end of the season, you're going to lose progress on all of these manufactories, and everyone's going to start at square one. But that got me wondering, like, is there a way for players to attack your manufactories and take them over? My guess is no, because they can attack like your trade routes. If you're running any sort of commodities, you show up on the map and people can come and attack you. So it seems like that's where the PvP aspect of it is going to be. And guys, it's hard to tell whether this is like a good system or not. I feel like you have to play through this over the course of a season to get a good idea over, you know, is this fun? Am I going to be able to do this over and over and over again? Are these endgame activities fun enough? Speaking of which, the next one that we played was called Legendary Heist, and this is where you need to go and take on a convoy of ships and steal the high-value cargo that's on there and then deliver it back to a destination. Now, unfortunately, my game glitched, and I wasn't able to accept this activity when everyone else in the game was, so I'm not able to like show you exactly what's going on, but essentially, it's a big convoy of ships, big one in the middle. You attack the middle one, get the item, and deliver it to a port, and you get your reward. Now, the final endgame activity we played is called Tides of Terror, and this is where you take on the seasonal boss. So for the first season, when the game comes out, it's going to be Philip Lepest and his fleet of pestilence. The difference with him is he lays down these pestilence bubbles all around in the water that you have to avoid, and then we figured out after failing the first time to kill him that you need to attack him when he's not moving and just rain mortar fire on him in one specific phase of the fight. And once we figured that out, it was a pretty easy fight. Now, this is a repeatable activity, so there's like a loot table, so you might get the really good stuff, you might get the not so good stuff, so it's, you know, encourages you to repeat this thing and get more infamy each time you do it. Those were the 3 endgame activities that they had us do, but they also had us do one more thing called Jaws of Retribution. This was on the bounty board, and we had to go out and slay this massive creature, basically what you would think of a mythical sea monster. Now, I was initially excited for this fight, but it ended up being more frustrating than fun, unfortunately, because the whole combat part of Skull and Bones is you have to see your target, and this thing goes underwater more than it's above water. So it's a lot of waiting around for him to pop up, and then by the time you see him, he's already going back underwater. I don't know, it would have been cool to build like a giant grapple hook or a harpoon in order to hook into this guy and then have him maybe, you know, like sail us around and unhook. I'd just say overall it felt a little underwhelming for me. But eventually we beat him. We got some cosmetic rewards out of it. But yeah, it just wasn't my favorite thing. Now, probably the most exciting thing for me personally that I saw was this Helm office. This is an area of the map that you can fast travel to from wherever you are. And this is where you manage your criminal empire. At first, I thought it was that menu that I've showed you guys earlier in this video. No, it's like a full-blown, in-depth system. You've got a distillery where you can turn raw materials into useful items, like sugarcane can be turned into rum. You've got this main desk where you can check the map of your empire, And then there's also leaderboards and upgrades. So leaderboards will rank you. It's kind of like a ranked system based on how many pieces of 8 you've collected, basically how, successful your empire is. And there's some exclusive rewards for people at the very top of the leaderboards. And then you can spend the currency on upgrades to make your distillery better, for example. Next up, you have this board you can walk up to check out your supply network. So this is interesting. This is kind of like daily endgame quests. So you can do supply deals in order to get some extra money in exchange for the cargo that you have. Or you can do attack dailies. So these will have you plundering a fort or hunting down a specific convoy in order to get a specific resource. So generally speaking, I think in terms of a game launching and having like a lot of endgame activities and a grind and something to pursue, it does feel like Skull and Bones is above average, I would say. It feels like there is a lot to do here, and whether or not it's good, whether or not it stands the test of time is not something I'm gonna be able to tell you in this video because I haven't experienced that yet. I've only played 4 hours. But I will say it's got a solid foundation. It's got the tools in place for lots of progression and endgame grinding and spending a lot of time on the game rather than some games that launch these days that are live service that don't have their endgame quite in place. I think that this game, Skull and Bones, certainly has a chance to keep you playing. Now, for me personally, it was always a long shot for the end game to be attractive to me. Like something I'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna sign up and actually play Skull and Bones for weeks and weeks and months and months. The odds were really never there because like I mentioned before, I really do wish that Skull and Bones was a different kind of video game, but here we are. It is what it is, and I'm just telling you guys, what I think about what's here. Well, it seems like they do have their ducks in a row. They're prepared for the end game part of the experience. I'm not sure that what comes before that is enough for me to even get to max level. I'm not convinced that the moment-to-moment combat, the grinding for resources, kind of like a survival crafting game, completing blueprints and upgrading my ship, the narrative elements that I was shown back in August, some of the jankiness, like with animations being missing, like, just showing up to a port and teleporting to the port instead of actually seeing my character get off of the boat. There's sort of a way that this game yanks the control out of your hands that kind of bothers me. Like I said back in my August video, this is a ship-based pirate game. It is not a land-based pirate game. While you can walk around in the ports, and there's even some shores you can walk around on and talk to NPCs, like very clearly when you look at that gameplay, this game was not meant for that. It's very rudimentary. All of the focus is on this ship gameplay where you have a massive cargo hold and you're just collecting a bunch of resources and then putting them into a warehouse, and a lot of the gameplay that you're going to experience revolves around being in menus and managing things instead of actually being out there and doing stuff. Ultimately, I think Skull and Bones is just a game with so much baggage, and even though I said before we have to evaluate like what's here instead of what could have been, it is so hard for me to turn a blind eye and just not pay attention to what could have been with Skull and Bones. One of the very first cinematic trailers for Skull and Bones still gives me goosebumps to think about. This gritty sort of fight between the British and, I don't know, the Americans maybe, but in this really huge storm, and it just conjured up my imagination. It got me thinking how awesome it would be to have this gritty pirate video game that felt like a step forward from Black Flag, and it's just so abundantly clear from all of the playtests that I've participated in that Skull and Bones is just not that game. Again, I'm not even saying that's a fair criticism because we have to look at what's here. I'm still going to play Skull and Bones when it comes out. I am going to put a solid chunk of time into this video game, and I'm hoping that there's some improvements from the last time I played the beginning of the game. But it's just hard for me to get excited for the game that Ubisoft chose to make at this stage instead of what it could have been. But I'm going to give it my best shot, and we're going to play it in February when it comes out. That is it for me, guys. Thanks, as always, to Ubisoft for allowing me to play their games early and share some pretty brutally honest feedback. I'm not just bootlicking here. They really are one of the best when it comes to, you know, letting you speak your mind, even if it is negative, and hopefully giving some constructive feedback. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. You got something from it. If you did, remember to hit that like button. I'd appreciate it. And also subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and ring the bell so you don't miss my next one. Thanks again for watching, and I will talk to you next time.